Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and welcome to my second tutorial associated with Chapter 2 of the Zelle 3rd edition textbook. And in this program, here's what we're going to be doing. We're, again, trying to emphasize this pattern of input, process, output, because in some kind of a macro sense, all of our programs can be thought to have those components. And while we're learning here, this is a great kind of aspect of them to concentrate on. And one of the things that we're going to do here is that when we're talking about these kind of sample programs that we create in our Python course, and maybe even some programs that we would be creating on the job, there are times when instead of having the user type in output, type in input at the console, that we just want to skip that step, and we just want to simulate that by creating a list in our Python program of strings that are going to serve as the input for the program. And this is, well, you'll see, we'll ask you to do that before the program's over. And I could see that you would have the use to do this on the job from time to time. Okay, so this is a simple program that simulates console input with a list of strings, and it's called Console Input Simulator. And here's what I want to do. I want, in this case, to have the list of strings be a list of city names. Okay? And what I want to do is I want to simulate that input as though the user had typed it in by putting it in a Python list. And we've seen Python lists already, but we're going to learn a lot more about them later. So we're going to find out an easy way to define and populate a Python list. And then this is another situation in which there's no real processing. I mean, again, one could say the processing is the printing of the list, but I don't think that really does it justice to the pattern that we're using: input, process, output. Because creating the output is really what we do when we're creating a printed list of the cities. Okay, so here's some pseudocode I cooked up for this. And again, I don't want you to watch me type, so I'm just going to copy it in and then we'll talk through it. Okay, so here's my pseudocode. For input, I'm not going to gather input from the user. I'm going to simulate the input. For processing, I'm just going to note that there is no processing. This is a pretty simple program. And then for output, I'm going to say, well, I want to create the output. Well, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to print a title line, and then I'm going to print a blank line, and then let's put a little indentation in here. And then there is a for loop that we can use, a definite for loop, that will just iterate over the items inside of our list and print each of them. So this has a deterministic length. It's like the loops we've used before, where we want it to go exactly 10 times. But what's nice is that it's going to use exactly the length of our list. It's not going to come up short. It's not going to go long. Okay? So this is a form of the for loop that we're introducing at this point. Okay, so let's create our real program. So we're going to say def main, right? We're going to do that. And let's see, let's copy down some code. Let's put in a comment with the first part of our pseudocode, simulate input. Okay. And again, are you always going to write the pseudocode? Well, no. I tend to go back to pseudocode when I'm doing something new, something that's not really something that isn't kind of second nature to me. Okay, which for a lot of you guys, that's just where you are here, right? So that's why we're doing the pseudocode. Okay, so what would that look like? Well, here's the code that I have for it, for simulate input. I'm just going to create a list. So we're going to associate the list. The list that we create is a value. It's an object that has a value. Okay, and we're associating it with a variable named cities, and so we're using an assignment to associate those two. And this this code here is how we initialize, how we can tell the Python interpreter to set up a new list for us and to populate it with these values. Now you can populate a list with all kinds of values. All these things are character strings. I've used the single quotes or the apostrophes, but it would have worked equally well with the double quotes that you see from the textbook. And I've given it the names Chicago, Milwaukee, Atlanta, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Vancouver. And so how long is this list? How many items are in it? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So when we process it, we want to process all 6 of the items. We don't want to come up short. We don't want to stop after San Francisco, and we don't want to go too long. We don't want to try to print something after Vancouver when we don't have it. Okay. All right. So that's the simulate input. Okay. And I'm just going to throw in the next line of pseudocode just because, again, when you're beginning, you might want to do things like this. Do you have to? No, but it can help you keep oriented. And then the last part is create output. So I'm just going to put in the pseudocode and all of the code from my already baked version. Okay. And there it is. So the first part is not too surprising. Remember how we said we were going to print a title line. So we print selected cities, because I think that describes it. It's not all cities, so it's selected cities. And then I wanted to print a blank line. That's a print without any arguments. And then what I wanted to do was to create a loop that processed the items in a list. And this construct is really powerful. You say for, and then you name a variable in, and then you use the variable that holds the list. So typically, our convention for naming the variable that points to a list is we give it a plural name. Okay, and if we're going to use the for to walk through the list, this variable name, this control variable or index variable as it's often called, it's usually just the singular of that plural name. So it's not accidentally that I'm saying for city in cities. Okay. And what's really nice is within the loop, you have to have this colon to introduce the body of the loop, and then the body of the loop is the indented code, just a single line, print city. So every time through the body, that name city takes on the value of the item that we have. So the first time through, it's going to be Chicago, then it's going to be Milwaukee, then Atlanta, then Los Angeles, then San Francisco, then Vancouver. Okay. So that's it. That's our main. And we've got some blank lines and some comments in here to make it easier to read. And now we have to invoke the main. We have to call main. So we need 2 blank lines to separate the invocation from the function. So we're just going to say main, paren, and that's it. Okay, so I'm going to give this a run. So run console input simulator, and let's look at what that output looks like a little bit bigger. It says selected cities: Chicago, Milwaukee, Atlanta, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Vancouver. Well, that's great. Well, what kind of things would I look for when I was testing this? Again, we're testing by inspections. We need to predict in our mind or on paper what the output's going to look like. So I was predicting selected cities and then a blank line, and then each of the members of the list, each of the items in the list in order, and that's what I got. So I predicted it, and that's what I got, which is not too hard when we're writing these kind of simple programs. Okay, and that's it. That's our code. That's our testing. That's the whole 9 yards. So again, one of the things that we have emphasized here again is that even that the pattern, this input process output pattern, is valuable to us even if we're not doing all the steps. Okay, so the simulate input, that's kind of pretending to do the first step. Note that there is no processing. We're not doing the middle step. And then to create the output, we're doing the third step. So this model, input process output, can be helpful even if you don't have work to do in all of the steps, right? And that's one of the major things that we're trying to get you thinking about here. And then we've got the details of the coding. So your assignment is kind of a companion program. So good luck on that, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.